Thanks everyone for joining us with the Behavioural Investor once again. We have a new guest, Francesca Johnston, a behavioural scientist, joining us from the small town of London. Thanks very much, Francesca. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you this morning. I'm a master's student at the LSE and I have a background in advertising, and I'm also working part-time with a company to promote sustainable behaviours and also working at a design agency. So hopefully I can add some value on the back of your conversation you had with David 2 weeks ago.
Will, you're with us again?
Yes, I've managed to make my way over to the same small town as I continue the odyssey of trying to find a job somewhere. Things didn't stick in Qatar, so I've got the podcast to keep me occupied, whilst to look for jobs and see where this project to do with the app takes us.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is the small town you come, the city of big dream.
Yeah, it's convenient having a British passport, thanks to my mother for being born here a few decades ago. So let's see what the opportunity turns into. I'm really excited. It's great the contrast between Qatar, Serbia, and Australia for that matter, and London. The locations where this podcast has been recorded from is vast. When I went walking around yesterday to get the first of 2 PCR tests I have to do during quarantine, I reckon more than 10% of the cars were electric cars. There's a different feeling being here. So.
The way, as you said, Francesca, how we sort of connected with you was through the last conversation we had with David. With that conversation, we started to talk about the development of an app and how we can modify behaviour to do good. Some of the areas that we touched on with David included behavioural modification and setting goals for yourself, and thinking about possibly an app in the way that we currently invest. And I know that you wanted to touch on topics such as hyperbolic discounting, and it's one that we have touched on previously, but do it too frequently. So it would be really great if we could touch on that again, just as a refresher for ourselves, but also maybe if we had some examples as well with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I listened to that episode and it was really insightful. I didn't know that we had such a language disparity with kind of delay discount and hyperbolic discounting. It essentially means that we discount the future at the expense of the present. So David spoke about it last time when we're very inherently present biased. We always do things for instant gratification because that's what feels good. And it kind of relates as well to this cognitive dissonance that we experience when we come to investment behavior. So we want to come across as a certain way. So for my friends that invest in crypto, or my friends that have got all these investment savings everywhere, I want to come across as I'm doing that as well. And in terms of your guys' venture, I want to say, yes, I'm going to make $1 billion in currency across 3 generations, but it doesn't actually feel good. And we just kind of go for the mental shortcut. So using behavioral science to recognize this biases, the fact that we have this disparity between how we want to be seen and how we actually act, and also hyperbolic discounting, how we say we'll do something but we actually don't end up doing it and we do the opposite. Just recognizing these and seeing kind of where that difference lies, just holding a mirror up to your biases can really help you recognize that and actually help you get one step closer to achieving that, or becoming the person that you want to be, or behaving in the way that you want to be in the future. So I was looking at kind of our habits and the original behavior of hyperbolic discounting. And basically, we should be doing this because we should be weighing up the costs and benefits. And we know that's what we should be doing. But like I said, we're shown that we actually don't do that. We're blinded by our cognitive biases. And in loads of behavioral science books, I'm talking about all the lecturers at LSE, everything. In fact, the latest book by Dr. Grace Lorden, she uses the premise in this hyperbolic discounting is the premise of her new book, that it's hard to initiate change over such a long time. So you guys have set yourself up for a very difficult task because it kind of goes against everything in our internal system. But she's basically said that the most effective way of changing behavior is not to focus on the long term, but it's to focus on the medium term. And she talks about it in kind of career progression. So it's kind of the medium version of you. But if you're kind of thinking about things in goals, yes, that's great. But I think you should think about things in kind of medium goals, kind of the 5-year rather than the 100-year. So
I have a question.
We'll have to take the t-shirt.
Yeah.
I have a question about hyperbolic discounting, and it's very much future orientated. So it's the concept getting a reward in the future is less attractive to getting the reward now. Does that also work in reverse, where if you were to have a reward and you received it 5 years ago, you value that reward less than if you were to receive that reward now? Is it always about the now is more important than some point in time off into the distance, whether it's in the future or whether it's in the past?
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's something that I've never thought about. But I would say, just from my knowledge, I would say yes, you are right, because our memories are always distorted anyway. So all memories we have are reconstructed in line with our own biases. So maybe you might have won something and you have this tangible, I don't know, award, say you won an Oscar, and you remember kind of, it's like that will relate to the peak end effect, where you've thought about the highest bit and then the end, and that's how we remember things. And there's memories is a different kind of ball game, because we can talk about kind of duration neglect and forecasting bias and spotlight effect, and this is all kind of things that make you distort your memory, but they are distortions. So I would say that you would value the present more than the past, but you also have that effect of nostalgia as well. So I guess it kind of depends on the memory. But one of my favorite examples, which is the reverse of what we've just spoken about, is similar to this episodic future thinking, but it was more of a present visualization, which the chief technology officer of Lloyds, who was actually previously the chief head of Google, employed in a controlled real-time experiment. And he asked Lloyds customers to draw. He got a A4 piece of paper and he asked customers to draw what he thought their finances would look like, or what they look like. He said, what do your finances feel like or look like to you? And him and his team found that there were considerable visual patterns and trends that he could visually group into a set number of categories. And my combination was kind of like a volcano exploding, and then I was drowning at the same time. So I think one of them might be this journey, and people drew themselves in lots of different scenarios, and they kind of had pathways kind of going each way, kind of route A, B, C, D. And I think that so what he got from that was people view their financial well-being as a journey. They view it as key milestones that they need to hit. And relating to the gold gradient effect, it's kind of, he translated that into a leave home, go to uni, buy my first house, get married, have a baby, kids go to university. And he's made this whole journey within Lloyds where people will save throughout these key milestones. And as a result of that, I've been seeing the bandwagon effect of loads of financial organizations and apps capitalizing on the same strategy. And from advertising as well, including NatWest's existing campaign at the moment. I don't know if, Wilfred, you might have seen it. It's on all the time on TV. And it's using this messaging, which is this clever use of today and tomorrow. So it looks at it's got 3 versions of the same man. And one man is asking about what color he should paint his walls. And then there's the yesterday version. And then there's the tomorrow day version, and they're all talking to each other. And it sounds quite silly, but it's actually backed up by behavioral insight. And you've got kind of the yesterday man that doesn't agree with the future and the present man. And then you can see how they kind of interact, but it's kind of save more so you can do more tomorrow or something. I can't remember the exact phrase, but it is looking at how you need to sacrifice. And there is an element of sacrifice when we talk about investing, because you are giving something up that you don't actually see, which I think is actually just really painful to get my head around. But this kind of delayed discounting, this hyperbolic discounting, is such a key aspect of it, and it's thinking about clever cues, messaging, design aspects that you can use to overcome that. And this intervention could go in hand, this messaging intervention could go in hand with prompts. So when you prompt someone at the right time without desensitizing them, and it depends on context. And in terms of academic studies, there have been a lot of tests where to encourage pension savings, what they've done is they've taken a photo of these participants and then they've showed aged protest embodiments of their future self. To the extent that this mirrored image was a vividly imagined future self, who had the effect of saving more money for the future. And this effect was significant. So it means that it could be applied in kind of other areas. But I don't know if that's something you probably wouldn't want to put in your app.
I was thinking that project or pension plan, was that a government one, or was it some private system?
It was, I think it was a private company did it as a test in collaboration with the university, I believe. But
okay, because they sound like they've addressed the problem we're trying to solve. They're looking at it, I guess, on the scale of one lifetime. We're just, the only reason, in a way, I freely admit that the project we're undertaking here, maybe the best way to put it is it's deliberately provocative.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing wrong with being provocative.
Yeah, I love the way that you put it, Ben. I think in the first interview with you, where you said, you need to have high, in a sense, ridiculous goals, because for goodness sake, we're trying to live life here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we've kind of proceeded then because $1 billion it's more than life-changing. It's unimaginably incredible what you could do. We started a little Substack newsletter because that's the cool thing to do these days, at least on Fintech. And I tried to sort of, calculate or characterize what you could do with $1 billion. And it was things like 16 Falcon 9 launches with SpaceX. It was funding a mission to go and get a sample from an asteroid. It's truly epically awesome, the sort of things that you can do. So then, basically the premise of this investigation over these episodes and interviews is to try to understand why us little humans, in the face of this tremendous power and opportunity that we could get through applying this compounding system over this long time, we fumble the ball, based on what you've been saying, that fundamentally it's about hyperbolic discounting or delay discounting. Yeah. There have been efforts by banks, and also obviously pension schemes have also tried to address these problems. So to me, what you've said is crystallizing the issue here. We need to solve the hyperbolic discounting problem. And basically, you're reinforcing what David said. We need to cut it up into small, as you said, small manageable briefs. You're saying 5 years. And we need to use some sort of portable Skinner box to stimulate people. We need to use the more high frequency messaging and stimulus language that us little humans in our savannah-based evolution respond to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've kind of hit the nail on the head. You've got the ingredients to make a really effective recipe here. Yeah, I mean, I can go, I think if I speak about financial organizations that have used behavioral insights, they are covering so much ground, especially in the UK. I mean, Monzo, that bank is just making like clear headway. It kind of started as a challenger bank, and now it's kind of one of the main key players. And I know that kind of NatWest and Lloyds, they've kind of been looking to Monzo to employ the same techniques. And also Plum, which has been my lifesaver, because Plum is basically an app for your financial health. It helps your financial well-being. It makes you understand things more. I'm basically very risk averse. So investing for me is a very risky situation. And that relates to behavioral science, the core tenet, which is prospect theory, and how our emotions get caught up in how we make risky decisions and how we value losses twice the times as we appreciate gains. So that is a massive thing about investment decision is prospect theory. And if you address kind of this loss aversion.
Sorry, what was prospect theory?
So prospect theory is basically one of the main theories of behavioral science. It basically covers loss aversion, anchoring, and the probability effect. And it's kind of these three biases that make up prospect theory. But in short, it's basically how humans make decisions that involve a degree of uncertainty. So this really relates to investment decisions, and it basically affects how we are emotionally invested in our decisions. So loss aversion is something that you definitely need to cover when you embark on your design journey, which is basically we value losses twice the amount as we appreciate gains. So say you found £10 on the floor, you'd be like, oh, nice one. But if you lose £10, you're going to be double devastated. And that's just how we think. And it does depend sometimes, but that's normally just the way it goes, inherent in our biases. With prospect theory, if you also have an anchoring reference point, which might not make me want to invest in something if I've got a strong reference point. Say I had a really substantial amount of money in the bank, and I've also got this kind of, I could make this investment decision that I could potentially lose it all, which will make me feel double devastated, and I've lost out twice as much, but also I wouldn't be at that reference point that I had. And it's kind of behavior, we have these mental shortcuts, and our brain is so lazy, and we don't want to work hard, so we don't like thinking about things. And we're also the majority of us are very financial illiterate. We don't really understand, so we just kind of use these kind of mental shortcuts and put things in boxes that just to make sense to us, and then we don't look at them again. And with prospect theory and anchoring, if you'd kind of be like, well, I had £100,000, and if I put 50,000 in an investment, I don't want to do that because I won't have that 100,000 well-rounded number that I already had. And that makes you emotionally invested to that original amount, which makes you not want to part with an investment decision. So it's also finding clever kind of design or insight that you can overcome loss aversion, I think. And yeah, I think that some of the apps, I think, are trying to address it by the regular prompts and kind of reassurance. And I think
so what does Plum do exactly? Like, it sounds like Plum and the generic app that we're sort of talking about here, it's kind of like a coach.
Absolutely. So basically, I think the baseline is it's an algorithm. And they did a study, and the effect was significant, that people trust something that has the word algorithm in more than a human. And this was recent. I think it was a dating app. They were saying, oh, this dating app is an algorithm. It will find you your perfect match, or this dating app has been created by humans. It will find you your perfect match. And the effect was significant, that people trusted an algorithm more, just because this was all hypothetical, just because it had the word algorithm in it. And it makes sense, because an algorithm, we've got used to them. We've been using them for about 60 years now with computers, and an algorithm will give you the same stimulus over and over again. So you will get the same output, which can make you more confident in your decision, and which is good for investment decisions. And taking an optimistic point of view, if you were a lawyer, wouldn't you want the most accurate decision-making tool available to you that cuts out all of the irrelevant data and helps you make the best judgment? So with Plum and Monzo, the algorithm helps because it helps tailor to the context of your decision-making. And that is the main issue we find in behavioral sciences. One of my lecturers is in my head now. Context matters, and any decision you make, it will never probably be the same in another context, because you might be hungry, it might be really hot at that time of day, all these kind of variable factors that I can see you're kind of like confused, but there's so many studies where more sentences.
I should have brought a notepad. I'll listen to this again and note down all the things. You are giving us a recipe.
There was a huge study in the States where they found out that judges who judges just before lunch sentenced more people just because they were hungry. So it's kind of like that thing. You can make so many decisions based on loads of factors, but with an algorithm, it's the same output every single time. And it is kind of this coach, that this AI brain saving tool friend that kind of can help you just make these quick, fast decisions that you don't want to, because you don't want to think about it. And in the context of investment, an algorithm can provide you with pro-risk or risk-averse information depending on you and your context, without their biases getting in the way. So yeah, I know you spoke to me on Twitter about using your emotions rather than being harnessed by your emotions, which I thought was a very, very poetic way of putting it. And using AI and algorithm is definitely a tool that can be creatively applied.
Well, actually, I did a psych degree.
Yeah.
My honours thesis was actually about the impact of emotions during negotiations. It's funny how, somehow it all maps onto what I've ended up podcasting about.
Absolutely. To pass out for yourself.
Yeah, it's wonderful doing these interviews to engage again with psychology. It'd be interesting to hear about your interest too with psych, Ben, because I know you studied it.
I just want to bring it back to some of the comments that Francesca made and the app. So, I mean, if we were to apply some of these to the app, could you have an app that has an algorithm that is somehow related to the initial inputs that someone signs up to the app with? So they may say, rate their level of risk appetite, they rate the types of investments that they're interested in, their ethical criteria as well. And then at a regular basis, this algorithm identifies the top 3 investments that meet that criteria, and it prompts that person just after they've had lunch to say, we found these, it's a good time for you to invest. And that keeps the continual cycle going. Someone's well fed, they're more likely to possibly invest with a small change. I'm just wondering if that's the sort of thing we could do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so genius. And this is a thing that Plum is already doing. So kind of the thing you said about having lunch. I mean, when it's raining, they automatically save more money in my account as rainy day savings because I'm not going out anywhere, which I just think is genius. It's so simple. But I mean, I've saved probably about 50 quid in May. I've probably saved about £200 because it's raining every day. Just all of these kind of automatic enrollments, these default things that just make it easy for the user to not have to think about anything. I mean, Plum automatically takes money out as soon as I get paid, so it knows my payday. It assesses my bank account. It can see how much money is going on my energy bill, that it actually sent me a real-time notification when my energy bill went out saying, your energy bill has gone out. If you switch to this energy provider, you could save X amount in 1 year. Wow. And I clicked in 3 clicks. I switched energy providers, just signed up, and I've saved myself over £100 a year or something. And they do different things like 52-week challenge. How much can you save in a year? As I said, it's linked to your bank, so it gives you a full financial diagnostic of kind of what you're spending on, and if there's a budget tracker. And then in terms of investment, this is the new feature that they've just launched, which is targeted for beginner investors. So like me, it makes it really, honestly, sorry to go off on a tangent, but
please.
I didn't know, I don't invest. I think my dad has kind of all my investments and I don't even know what he's doing with them. So what I did was, and you guys can do this too, is if you go on Google, you can type investment is, and then it will give you like a quick kind of what people think of investing. And I actually wrote some of these down.
I'm going to do that right now.
You can. The first 3 were: investment is gambling, investing is a waste of time, investment is a long-term game, true, investment is easy, that was an anomaly, investment is stressful, investment is addictive, investing is too risky. So I viewed that as I was definitely in the majority rather than the minority.
Yeah, the last one here, the bottom of the list is investing is the key to wealth.
Yeah.
It's interesting that that's the last entry. And the first one is investing is like gambling. Yeah, interesting for me.
It is really interesting. I do that kind of for loads of stuff. I don't really know, have much self-experience. I've got the theory, but I don't have the self-experience. But yeah, sorry, back to what I was saying. As I was saying with the investing, so they've recently started this kind of part of the app for beginners, and it's basically the first user interface, which I think I sent you, is it shows you a visual projection of how much you could make if you did a monthly deposit, and you can change the deposit. And there's an intuitive slider bar which can move up and down as it shows you your potential gain in real time. The second thing it does straight away is it shows you that it's automated. So once again, backed up by the algorithm, which I think is key to know that your money's in better hands, and it's all to make you feel a sense of relief and assuage you into thinking kind of this AI is doing bits with the bank. And finally, the main one, which is probably related to your psychology degree, it uses psycho-targeting and prospect theory based on risky investments. So they've made kind of 10 bundles of various combinations that appeal to psychometrics, such as green investments or British investments, technology investments. So kind of, you know, if you're what you're kind of interested in, and then they've done a riskometer of how risky it will be.
The number of
the number of chilies, exactly. So if you're pro risk and you want to invest in technology and startups, then you choose that one, and then you can choose how much you want to invest, and it will tell you how much you'll get. Obviously, that will be larger than, say, if a risk-averse person invested in green technologies and that was only 2 chilies and they got a smaller but more consistent investment over time. I mean, the risk thing I thought was pretty genius, because it wasn't just about interest. It was kind of boys are actually genetically more pro-risk from evolutionary science, and women are risk-averse. So I thought this just made sense anyway. But yeah, it's in terms of kind of tech companies that are implementing these behavioral strategies, it's definitely growing, and that there's just so much you can go with it, and so many places you can go with it.
So Plum actually sounds like the app. It sounds like the idea that we had.
Yeah.
We don't do anything, Will.
Damn it. I was thinking, no. This is a star business, so it looks like a fast-growing niche, right? We just need to beat the competition and lead the niche. This was another episode where we talked about the star principle from Richard Koch, Francesca.
Yeah.
But yes, it's not a blue ocean. It will turn into a red ocean as we kill that other shark.
I love that. I love that. Honestly, these apps are definitely growing. I wonder if Monzo will do one. I mean, they use behavioral science to help people just keeping track with spending. The fact that kind of like the old dinosaur banks, the traditional kind of 4, are looking to Monzo and Plum for these insights, and working kind of with the behavioral insights team in the UK government to help people get a better understanding of their overall financial health is, yeah, it's growing. So I definitely think that this is something that you can take bits but also put your own spin on it, and then it could be so different from all the insights that you learn in this podcast.
Great. It sounds like we've got the green light from nothing less than a LSE behavioral scientist. So I'm pretty excited. I guess that's probably the half hour, but if I could squeeze in one,
yeah.
It's a bit pessimistic, but I obviously it's good to finish things on a high note, but at the same time, I think it's important. So better or worse, and it relates to something that we talked about have talked about earlier in the podcast. What about self-mastery? I know that sounds like a 7 habits of highly successful people cringeworthy comment, but I was just thinking, if we're driven by this, and it's got an algorithm, and essentially it turns into an oracle for our lives, it almost seemed like we're left as these little urge-driven creatures. I'd like to hear about if there's much discussion in behavioral science about improving our ability to direct ourselves.
Yeah, well, one of the main arguments is I've probably talked about algorithms so much, but that's definitely not a core tenet of behavioral science. And we talk about it kind of as, you know, it kind of makes us feel safe, but self-mastery is about recognizing our cognitive blind spots, and it is about recognizing our own biases to make us understand and kind of put a mirror in front of ourselves and saying, okay, I'm aware that I do this, and how do I change it, and focusing on working on ourselves. And that definitely comes before any AI powered app. And, you know, kind of when you do become self-aware of, I spend too much money on the present at the expense of the future, I need to be aware that I value losses twice as much as I value gains. It is putting a mirror up to yourself and recognizing where your faults are as a person, even though there is some literature coming out saying this literature has been out for a while and people aren't recognizing it. I do, as an optimist, feel like this is the direction that we are going in, and we can work on ourselves, and self-mastery should definitely be placed above computer generated.
Right. So I think this is how we can dominate the niche. The messaging, because one of the topics for us to cover was marketing messaging and behavioral noise. We haven't covered that either. But I think a way to dominate the niche would be to take an advocacy approach where we say to people, all these other behavioral investing and behavioral design apps, they just try to take over your life. What we will do is we'll show you those techniques. We'll be the magicians that tell you the trick behind all the other magicians' tricks. And we'll offer you the chance to be responsible for improving your own life. We'll give you the first principles that other apps and banks exploit.
That's great. I think you've definitely differentiated yourself. You can create a strong foothold and positioning as a new approach, and you see this happening, and you'll be doing it before the market gets so saturated, before the banks do it, which they can do it so easily. You'll be the kind of rebels of investment. You need to find the motives of change by fusing facts and feelings, and an AI can't have feelings. So if you fuse facts and feelings, I think, you know, choosing technology and emphasizing self-mastery, you can achieve your goal.
That's a great way to wrap up, I think. Francesca, I'm not sure whether you're looking for people to get in contact with you or not, but if people wanted to, did you want to give any Twitter feed or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So my Twitter is Francesca Chess, like the board game.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. It was so lovely to be here, and wishing you all the best of luck. I will be an avid follower of your journey. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where you guys end up and what you do with it.
Yeah, similar to David, let's stay in touch. It sounds like success here involves unleashing a team of behavioral scientists. So we've found another one. Great to meet you.
Really, it was lovely to meet you. Have a good day in London and have a good evening.